So the ones that are free are the best. But
yeah. Well, it's a huge
Happy New Year.
It's breaking out of that
what the program puts in, she's not code is
Sure. Yeah, we're definitely opening up our.
yes, you have a meeting. And she was his early classes.
I think it's a good solution, a good step in the right direction too, because it's not just one person that is.
All right, kids. It's 5:01 Tuesday night, local time here in Bali. Time to do it once again. Our weekly Bitcoins in Bali meetup. This is the filter number 131. 130 times we've done this already, and we're going to do it at least one more time tonight. And well, what is the filter? It started a few years back, like 2014. We were hanging out in Ubud, and there were some crypto coin enthusiasts way back then. And we simply wanted a way to compare notes, to keep on top of all the news. All day, every day, there's an avalanche of crypto news, lots of scammy stuff, lots of useful information. And we decided we wanted to get together every week and talk about it, help each other out, use our collective brain to filter the good stuff from the bad stuff. So what are we going to talk about tonight? Well, we've got tonight's show is called Blood in the Water. And if you look at the prices, there's a lot of red numbers on the screen. And it has something to do with South Korea. So we're going to talk about South Korea and a little bit about the price. And of course, in the midst of that, we're going to learn a new vocabulary word. So keep your eyes peeled for the word of the day. We've got a Bitcoin vocabulary word for you tonight. Keep your eyes peeled for that. And then I'm going to address the big question in crypto today. What is the biggest question we're all faced with? This is what we're going to cover tonight. Anyone know what that is?
When to sell.
Yes. What are the 5 coins that are going to make you rich next year? Who wants to be rich? No, that's not what we're going to talk about.
No, that's not what we're doing.
You thought you were at a OneCoin meeting, didn't you? No, we're going to talk about blockchain scaling. Blockchain is this new technology, and Bitcoin has encountered one of the first problems. Of course, there are many, but the first one that regular people can appreciate. My transactions are expensive, or they're not happening, they're slow. This is something that's going to be encountered by every technology that uses blockchain. Everyone's thinking about this problem. How are we going to provide this for the entire planet? It's really cool technology, but it's going to work for everybody without excluding the poor amongst us or excluding some segment of the world's population. We don't know yet, but in my opinion, this is the question of our day. And it's a bit technical, but it's also a bit cultural, and there's some people factor in the whole question. So we're going to try and make it appealing for everybody. Let's jump right in.
Sounded better.
All right. Yeah. You want the 5 coins? There is another group getting together. If you listen closely, you'll probably talk or hear them getting together. There's a traders group that meets on another day during the week.
Here.
See us after for details. Okay. Let me share my screen here, guys. Kick things off. Everybody at home should be seeing what we're all seeing up here. Can everybody see that okay? All right. Blood in the water. What am I talking about? Look at all this red in the top, how many? Top 11 are all in negative territory for the last 24 hours. Of course, it's carnage. It's mayhem. This is what all the headlines are saying, oh no. Of course, if you've been in crypto for a little while, you've probably got a stomach for this kind of thing. It happens from time to time. And usually it's news related. Sometimes it's chart related. And I thought I'd pose the question to everybody here today. What is going on? Why are the prices all red there this morning?
CoinMarketCap decided to not include the South Korean exchanges because they're usually trading at like 20-30% higher or something like that. So that messes up the overall price of the assets.
Yes, indeed. We are looking at coinmarketcap.com right here. And I think you are correct in your assessment. They basically shaved off a bunch of exchanges from their pricing mechanism that were showing a 30% premium over the prices for other coins in Korea. Now, why on earth would there be a 30% premium on coins in Korea? That's the more interesting question than the price drop. Why are coins 30% more expensive in Korea than other parts of the world?
Is it because they're like the cash flow for the overflow from China?
There's capital controls on the one, so there's no arbitrage opportunities for people to equalize the value across different exchanges.
Yes, you'd think that if there was a 30% prize out there, that if anyone could find their Bitcoin at the global price and make their way to Korea and sell it for a 30% bonus, they would do it. So if they're not doing that, yeah, that's arbitrage. But if they're not doing that, then what does that 30% represent?
Profit for the exchanges.
Ah, you think it's the profit for the exchange? You think the exchanges are doing the arbitrage?
Same thing happens in Thailand.
No, the government's getting something.
The government's getting something. Oh, I like the conspiracy theme tonight. Right up my alley. Where's the tinfoil? Who's got the tinfoil? Oh, shoot. Yeah, I don't really know. What I do know is there's a 30% bounty out there. There's 30% of profit for somebody, and it consistently exists. So for me, my explanation is that that's the friction it takes to get money in and out of Korea, because if you want to complete that arbitrage loop, you got to buy it in, say, the United States or Australia, send your Bitcoin to the exchange in Korea, and then sell for Korean currency, and then convert that back to the home base, Australia or the US, and rinse and repeat. But if there's that much money that, if it's that hard to get Korean money out of Korea, then perhaps the 30% premium represents that, right? And also, this could explain why, in the first place, there's a 30% premium, because the government doesn't want them to leave with their money. What's one of the facets of cryptocurrency? It defeats capital controls. It's not censorable by governments. And so would you rather have Korean money that you can only spend in Korea, or world money that you can exchange anywhere? That's a rhetorical question, but could account for the 30% premium in Korea. So I don't know, any thoughts on that? That sound reasonable?
Yeah.
There's also a Korean regulator crackdown on exchanges. Started yesterday.
Yeah. Let's take a look at that. Oh, by the way, before we get into the Korea story, I just want you all to know that we don't have to worry about all this FUD around crypto, because CNBC has opened their crypto trading desk. We can all rely on CNBC for all of our crypto news. And they can make sure that we will not get wrecked. which is our vocabulary word of the day. This is the word of the day, wrecked, spelled R-E-K-T. That's the proper spelling. Anybody know what this means? Come on, you guys don't know what wrecked means? Well, obviously it hasn't happened to you yet. All you people who want the top 5 coins and how you're going to get rich next year, you should be familiar with this word, because that's
Crash and burn.
Yeah, this is when you lose a bunch of money on the crypto markets. You're wrecked. I don't know. Is the hashtag a part of the spelling? I don't know. Anyway, wrecked, R-E-K-T is the name of it. But now that we've got CNBC on board, that won't happen again. All right. What is going on in Korea? Bitcoin sinks as website suddenly removes South Korean exchange prices from calculations. That's the thing that you mentioned,
Sure.
Giorgio. And let's take a look here. Every crypto is priced at a 30% premium in South Korea, said Greg Dwyer, head of business development at cryptocurrency derivatives exchange BitMEX. So that seems plausible to me, that if they yanked the average price from those exchanges, and those were all 30% more, that you'd see a drop in the price. And since we're in a speculative market, people will pop open crypto market cap every morning when they wake up. If they see that every coin has dropped, they might not be that interested in the reason why. The news might be just that the prices went down. How many people sell when the price is taking a plummet? And that's the only thing you know about what's happening. How many people have bought a coin because it's been going up, but don't really know anything about the coin? I've done both these things. I'm the only person. Yeah. So actually, price and price trend, I mean, that is information about the coin itself. In fact, that's a proxy for all the other information that the rest of the world is using to price that asset. So it's a kind of not a very precise way to judge a coin, but if it's moving up or if it's moving down, that should say something about sentiment, which is represented in the price. And so in this case, they simply changed how they calculate their average. Everybody who popped open crypto market cap this morning is like, oh my God, everyone's selling their coins. Not necessarily the case. It's just the way they calculate the average.
They could have given a heads up to the community, like, oh, we're actually changing the way that our website is going to be calculating things. Because they probably bought a bunch of coins, like knowing that was going to happen.
Yes, indeed. we still exist in the wild, wild west. That's a great point. If you worked at crypto market cap, and by the way, we did some calculations about how much money they make. They make a lot of money on advertising. It's one of the top sites for crypto, and that the advertising banners go for like 21 million a month or something, US dollars. It's a lot of dough.
I think it's the top site, one of the top sites in the world now.
Is it?
Yeah.
Probably.
I think it's in the top 100 for sure.
Really? Yeah, so they're making tons of advertising dollars, but that's not their only revenue stream. They can also game the market by changing the average price by removing the Korean exchanges from their price. How would you make money? If you knew that information in advance, do you think you could make money doing that?
Yeah.
Right. Oh, it's such a good business model they've got. They can sell advertising. They can do insider trading.
The entire global market.
Is it? No, I think Ethereum's down. Top 11 are down this morning over the last 24 hours.
Well, the last 2 or 3 days, it's almost doubled.
Yeah. This was just a 24-hour time segment.
Very quick question. Could we correlate this to Indonesia? I mean, on bitcoin.co.id, Bitcoin has been up to $2,000 higher than average North American exchange.
Or more, $5,000 or $6,000.
Okay. So would the Indonesian market not be as important globally as the Korean markets or?
Well, you can look at the relative volume that is traded on those different exchanges, but I think it's the same dynamic. You've got a more restrictive government in Indonesia than in other places, and so that's where the premiums show up. If there are capital controls, then the arbitrage bots run out of ammunition, and there's nobody that has those loops set up to be able to take advantage of those price differentials. The answer to that is you should just go vacation in the spot that has the premium. You just show up at the place where they're getting a 30-40% premium for their Bitcoin. You sell your Bitcoin there, and then you get a 30% discount on your vacation. Piece of cake. Just have to find somebody on the street to sell your Bitcoin to, and go into a back alley and hope they don't kidnap you. That's our 30%, right?
Anything for a deal.
All right.
What did you hear about South Korea? The requirement for lawyers to open up bank accounts now.
In Korea, they're requiring lawyers to do what?
Anybody can open up an exchange account, but there's a lawyer requirement.
I think you're referring to KYC, which is Know Your Customer, and anti-money laundering. So you have to take a picture with yourself and a newspaper from the day and a note that says, my name is such and such, and I want to open an account.
It's not KYC or AML. Well,
it's something different.
There's new information that lawyers have to open up bank accounts on behalf of individuals in South Korea.
Well, that sounds convenient.
There's other implications of this too.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. But the regulators, let's see if we can get into the story here.
In many ways, they're kind of proving the use case of crypto.
Yeah, that's the irony of it.
Make
They're
it
like,
so damn difficult to get your money in any shape or form, make it impossible to open a bank account. Crypto, you can do it.
yeah, it's like they're squeezing harder and harder, but the sand is going through their fingers, or what they're trying to do is slipping through their fingers. Well, what actually happened? I think they the regulators approached the 6 unnamed banks in Korea and have said that they want to review their policies around KYC and AML, those are the things I just mentioned, anti-money laundering and know your customer. Basically, they want to know everybody that's exchanging money on that exchange and who they are and how much money they have, so that they can tax them, make sure they're not terrorists, make sure they're not mafia, that make sure they're not laundering money. So those 6 banks that have that are affiliated with those 3 exchanges, that whole thing I think precipitated the removal of the exchanges from the crypto market cap average, and it remains to be seen what Korea is going to do from a regulatory standpoint. It's safe to say they're freaking out. I think they're freaking out a little bit. The regulators are wondering, how is this going to affect the status quo? And they're defaulting to an answer of no, or everybody freeze until we figure out what's going on. But that's just incredibly inconvenient for everybody else. I just want to make you aware, we're not going to watch this video, but there's a great video on YouTube by Andreas Antonopoulos called Money as a System of Control, where he talks about how every bank and now every exchange around the world has been deputized mostly by the US IRS, but other countries are getting involved, where they have to surveil their entire customer base on behalf of the authorities so that they can keep us safe. And I've been accused of being kind of religiously free market. And I've lived in Indonesia long enough to know that sometimes when there's no rules, that's also inconvenient. So I suppose the real answer lies somewhere in the middle. But I think this is something we need to guard against. For tens of thousands of years, or at least the last 1,000 years, we've had money that really wasn't surveilled, cash money. We haven't lived in an Orwellian 1984 environment, because we have had the freedom of cash, the anonymity of cash, and the ability to transact and congregate freely. And we don't really know what will happen when we're being surveilled and we're using digital money that can be turned off with the flip of the switch based on political reasoning. So I think we need to guard against that.
India is doing that. India is doing that in a big way. It's called Aadhaar.
Yes.
1 out of 6 humans on the planet lives in India. And within a span of 6 months, this present administration, Narendra Modi's administration, managed to get every single Indian onto their books as of Jan 1 this year.
Yes, Aadhaar. That's got 2 A's on the front, and 2 A's in the har. 2 A's on the ad and 2 A's on the har. Aadhaar. Is that like an Indian name? This is something you need to be aware of, because they took 1 billion people and they fingerprinted them and they iris scanned them, and they're tying it to their phone and their bank account. And I thought they should just tag them in their ear, like a piece of cattle, or you could brand them.
That's what they do when they vote.
Okay.
If you do not, largest democracy in the world, 1.3 billion people. So when you vote, your left index finger gets a little dot on it. It stays for 3 days, so you can't vote.
Yeah.
Once you got that dot,
they did that. I remember they did that in Iraq when they had the first Iraqi elections after the war. Everyone had to stick their thumb in some sort of indelible ink.
They do that here.
They do that here as well. Well, sometimes you got to revert to analog. There are use cases for that. Anyway, I think it's something to guard against. I mean, there's probably some happy medium, but I don't think we need to watch every person's every transaction at every moment. And we certainly don't want to have a system where where a government can just decide you can't participate in society, and your person or your money is no longer any good.
So how do we guard?
Well, I mean, it's a dynamic situation. It's an ongoing situation. I think you have to be aware, pay attention, and figure out what tools are at your disposal. Open source software, things like Bitcoin, personal practices around your operational security. But yeah, I think it's a struggle. They're going back and forth. The government wants to watch everything, and the people want their privacy, and we're going to arrive at something. But it's really up to everybody to kind of push with their friends and within their society to get what they want, and hopefully that what we all get is something better than than the worst it could be. Has everybody read the book 1984?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like pretty much required reading in the USA, which I'm thankful for. And yeah, it paints a pretty dour outlook for a totalitarian state that, where your TV, or in our case, our smartphone, is with us and looking at us at all times. Anyway, if you haven't read it, it's also good to go back to. I read it when I was a high school kid. I don't think I even registered with me at that time. So anyway. All right. With regard to regulation, I just wanted to make you guys aware. Our friend Andrea turned me on to this book, Anti-Fragile. And you see a lot of reference to this speculation where they're like, we want to protect people against this irrational trend of investing in cryptocurrencies, noting the ongoing fever of speculative investment. And so this line of reasoning for regulation, I think, is something, well, I can wholeheartedly say that's not something I want the government to do, is to tell me that I'm too irrational or tell me that I'm too exuberant. And there's a whole book about the philosophy of letting people make their own mistakes, or systems that gain from disorder. And really, I think people need to, it's my philosophy that people need to make their own mistakes in crypto. And if you want to give your money away, if you want to put your money behind something that's a scam, there's no better way to learn about that than to lose your money. And if you're always thinking that the government is protecting you from such things, I mean, the government is a very small portion of overall society. They cannot be there at all times in all places, and they really cannot protect you from everything. It's a better approach, I think, to not have the regulation, let people make their own mistakes, and then let spontaneous order arise, right? And adopt a system that gains from disorder, is not shocked by disorder. So check out this book, Anti-Fragile. I don't get a kickback or anything from this. It's just something to take a look at. Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb. You can also follow him on Twitter, and he's got a very contrarian tone with just about everything else you read in the financial press and in economics. If you haven't heard about him, check him out. He's cool.
Will you share these links in the filter later?
What's that?
Will you share these links in the filter later?
I will share these links. Yes. I'll make a point of it. Okay. Now for the most important question of our day, I think we're going to talk about tonight is scaling. And Bitcoin is having a scaling problem at the moment. Bitcoin is having a scaling problem at the moment. And there are two competing ideas about how to solve that problem. There is on-chain scaling, and there is layer 2 scaling, or Lightning Network. And we're going to talk a little bit about Lightning Network. We got into this a little bit last week, but we had our celebrity guest in the house, and we decided to take advantage of his presence, and we cut the Lightning Network discussion short. So I'm going to go there yet again. Lightning Network, scalable, instant Bitcoin / blockchain transactions. Doesn't that sound nice? Right now, is Bitcoin scalable? No. I mean, we're only getting like 3 or 4 transactions per second. Is it instant? No. We have to wait at least 10 minutes, and a lot of people complain about having to wait longer than that. And so Lightning Network is a proposed solution to this problem. Let's dig in a little bit and see exactly what this thing is. Last week, we watched this little video for 5 minutes. I'll post that link. This was kind of the pro Bitcoin network, or Lightning Network propaganda, if you will. And we've got the negative Lightning Network propaganda that we're going to watch in a minute. But I just want to remind you guys how it works. And there's a great infographic that was published, was that yesterday, on what exactly is the Lightning Network. Is there anyone here that feels like they have a good understanding of the Lightning Network, has done some research on this and looked into this, feels good, can help me out with this subject matter? No?
Yes, he's raising his hand.
Yeah, okay, cool. Feel free to jump in or help me describe this. And I don't think anybody knows if it's going to work or not going to work, or whether it's a good idea or it's not a good idea. This is a dynamic situation using technology that is interacting with society at large, and it's a bit unpredictable. So we have to help each other figure it out. Okay, so frequent concerns about the Lightning Network are that I don't want to pre-fund future payments. So the Lightning Network requires people to actually stake Bitcoin or lock up Bitcoin so that a channel can account for the transactions that take place over that network. So they have to lock up actual Bitcoin in order to open up a channel. And people are wondering, well, if I lock up my Bitcoin, like, what if I want to spend it? You know, I don't know how much coffee I want to buy in advance. So how much do I stake? How much do I put up? And I want it when I want it. Also, I don't want to lock up funds so that they can't be, so I can't use them elsewhere. That's the same thing. I'll have to close and reopen the channel whenever I want to replenish funds. And I have no idea in advance how many coffees I'll buy from a coffee shop. So these are the things that people are saying, I think, due to a little bit of a lack of understanding of how it works. And so we're going to try and dispel some of that confusion here. Here are the positive aspects. Your regular Lightning Network channel will just be like your hot or spending wallet. So all of us have been walking around Ubud, spending Bitcoin on chain for the last few years. It was working pretty well until the fees got out of control and people stopped spending their Bitcoin. But they're saying here that Lightning Network will be just like that hot wallet experience, or that wallet on your phone that you're just walking around with. Also, establishing the channel is analogous to funding a hot wallet. So it's, again, that hot wallet metaphor is something that people already understand. And the third point, you're probably not going to open a channel with every or any bloody coffee shop. So how will that work? So we're going to compare and contrast those two things. How many people have been participating in this experiment we've been doing in Ubud, where we go to a restaurant that accepts Bitcoin and pay for our meals, and have had a good experience with the old Bitcoin on-chain scaling? So we're going to compare that experience to what we hope we'll get with the Lightning Network, and then how will that actually work. So we already understand the concept of creating a hot wallet for regular spending. The way we used to do it was we had money on an exchange or in our cold storage, and we would send that to our phone in our hot wallet, and then we could walk around and spend that at Kismet, spend that at Bali Bohemia, stay the night at a Viceroy Hotel, and everything happened on chain. So if you compare that with the Lightning Network, you have the same source of your funds, but you send it to a Lightning Network node. That requires one on-chain transaction, and the old way required one on-chain transaction. So a single on-chain transaction establishes your connection to one of the nodes in the Lightning Network, right? So let's look at how the channel is established, right? We've got our connection, our hot wallet connection to one of the nodes, and that node has an Bitcoin staked on the network. So let's say they've got 10 Bitcoins, tens of thousands of dollars at their disposal. A bunch of us in Ubud could be connecting to that one Lightning Network node. That's a single point of failure. Something to look for when we evaluate these things is the centralization. This is one of the knocks on Lightning. So keep that in mind. But that Lightning node is connected through an internet of value that's like the internet itself, only with Tor technology built in from the beginning. So you can imagine that this is the universe of Bitcoin nodes that are out there. Maybe this one is in Kansas City in the United States, and this one is in Ubud, and we can route our value through the network to whomever we're paying that's on the network. So you can think of this like the internet, right? It's an internet that sits on top of the internet and routes payments through the network based on, who's got what path available to the person you're trying to pay. All right. Does anybody have any questions about that? Let's push on down here. So here's the difference on how things work on the way they used to work and how they might work here. So you've got on-chain. You want to pay Andreas because you're really happy that he did such a good job over the last few years, and you want to donate to him. So we pay him. We do it on chain. This is his address, and that's that. Today, that transaction is going to cost, I think the average Bitcoin transaction is over $20 these days. So that would cost you $20. Compare that with establishing a Lightning network connection with one transaction to a Lightning network node. And then presumably Andreas is also on a Lightning network node. And you can route the value through the network to him this way. Now, the thing is, you've just got one Lightning network transaction opened here. And so if you're on chain, if you want to do the second transaction, you've got to do another Bitcoin transaction to pay the second person. But in this case, since we've already got the Lightning network open, we don't have to perform another transaction on the Bitcoin network itself, on the Bitcoin blockchain. We can simply use the original transaction that we used to open the network connection, and we can route our value to the second person. So here we've got $20, $40. Here's a third one that's $60 in fees versus the $20 in fees that we used to open up the connection in the first place.
Is that connection forever or just that one transaction?
That's a good question. The conceit out there is that you're going to have to break your connection to the Lightning Network node, and then that will precipitate another Bitcoin transaction, and that will also be expensive. But the key thing that I think a lot of people aren't understanding is that you can, let's say that you've expended all of the Bitcoin that you've established with that Lightning Network node. You can actually top up your account without incurring that same expense. So you can actually send more money to your Lightning Network node without incurring the same expense that you had opening up in the first place, because you've got a trust relationship with that node, right? Even though it's all following the consensus rules of the Bitcoin network itself, and all the value they're transferring is accounted for and spoken for. It's not a reserve-based system like the current banking system. They've got the 100% of the Bitcoin is spoken for that's traveling over the network. It's just that you can, Willie likes to describe it as a bar tab. You've got a bar tab open, and you can transact using that bar tab without closing it, and then you can close it at some time in the future. But the cool thing about the technology is you're able to top it up. Let's take I think it's described here. Let's see. Okay, but now your channel funds are depleted. You have to close and reopen the new channel. No, I can rebalance my channel with a single on-chain payment, just like you would to refill your hot wallet. So here's, before you would have to send money from your exchange, your cold storage to your hot wallet. That would be one transaction. And here's with the Lightning Network, you've got one on-chain transaction to any number of nodes who will send commensurate amounts via Lightning Network to rebalance your channel, most likely to be the node you are directly connected to. So a single Bitcoin transaction in both cases. Okay, I like that. But what if I want to move some of my excess funds back into cold storage? Well, you've got the same situation here, where you got your hot wallet. Maybe you want to send that back to an exchange or back to your paper wallet. The same thing happens with the Lightning Network, where you can find a Lightning Network node, either the one you're connected to or one that's in the network, that will send funds on chain back to your cold storage or Bitcoin exchange. So a single on-chain transaction in both instances. Okay, so just to recap, establishing a spending wallet, a single, let's see here. Is this supposed to be on-chain and this is Lightning?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Saying that happens to both.
Okay. Oh, establishing, okay, single confirmed on-chain transaction, refilling and spending wallet, single confirmed on-chain transaction, withdrawing from a spending wallet, single confirmed transaction. This is in both cases. Spending transactions, these are instant, unlimited, and trustless. These are confirmed mining fees and also trustless. They're both trustless because the Bitcoin itself exists or is staked on the network nodes, and there's never any unaccounted for funds where if you owed somebody the funds, if someone wanted to opt out, where the funds would, they would check their pockets and they wouldn't be available. That can't happen based on the way the system is now. Okay, I'll also include a link to this. You can read it in more detail at your leisure, let's watch this video. Hopefully we've got enough audio here to explain why the Lightning Network is not a good idea. Check it out. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, Manu shared it.
Mano showed it already?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not hearing
Is it
it.
working?
Cash. No.
All right.
Hey, you. You may have seen something about Bitcoin a few years back. It sounded revolutionary. This was going to replace the banks. It was permissionless, decentralized, peer-to-peer electronic cash. No one can take it from you. You can send any amount for less than a penny fast. But damn, the price was $100 and it would probably fail anyways. So you better play it safe and see what happens. Then you saw the price recently on the news, $15,000. And immediately your stomach dropped because you realized that how rich you could have been, but you blew it. But you realize that it's still going up fast. And if you invest now, you're probably still on the ground floor. When you finally get your Bitcoin, after waiting 5 hours for it to confirm, you realize that some is missing. Turns out that your small investment was $30. $15 went towards the transfer fee to put it in your wallet. This is what was going to change the world? Let me fill you in on what happened while you were gone. Transaction fees have risen because of the block size. Block size is 1 megabyte currently and only allows for a few transactions per second to take place. Many more happen than this, so the people who pay the highest fee get to go first in line. On December 12, 2017, at the time I'm recording this video, the average transaction fee today was $24.40. This problem only gets worse with time and as adoption spreads. Instead of raising the block size again, the development team has decided to go for a second layer called the Lightning Network. It promises instant transactions, super low fees, and this is the basics of how it works. Let's say me and you transact regularly, so we open a channel for 2 Bitcoins. I send a Bitcoin and you send a Bitcoin to a multi-signature address, where it's temporarily locked away. Now we're free to trade 2 Bitcoins back and forth with no fees, as long as we sign each transaction. This is because the actual Bitcoin was never moved. We're essentially trading for the rights of the coin off-chain, similar to an IOU. When we close our channel, it settles on the blockchain. Our IOUs are redeemed, and we get our share of the real Bitcoin. The only time the high transaction fee occurs is when you open or close the channel to settle up. You want to transact with somebody you don't have a direct channel open with. Let's say you want to transact with Bob and pay him 1 Bitcoin. Bob does not currently have an open channel with you, and you don't want to have to pay the fees to open another channel. It turns out that my first cousin Sam has an open channel with Bob. You could send the payments through our channel and use the channel I have open with Sam, and finally from Sam to Bob, paying me and Sam very small transaction fees for using our open channels. This is ideally how the network would work, hopping from individual to individual until your transaction meets the intended recipient. But it turns out if Sam isn't as fortunate as us, and our channel only has 0.5 Bitcoins deposited, this won't work. There has to be enough loaded on each channel along the way for it to be used, and the network must find another route. Luckily, it turns out that Bob and you both eat at the same pizza shop regularly enough that you both have open channels. The pizza shop has plenty of Bitcoin in its channel and is 1 less hop than the last example. Bob gets paid, less fees for you, and the pizza shop gets a reward for providing a useful service. Everyone wins. Or so it would seem. A problem with this system is the requirement to preload every open channel you have ahead of time, with what you assume will be the upper limit of your spending habits with that channel. It's more convenient to have 1 open channel and a large amount of Bitcoin to a well-connected party that consistently has more money than you, so you can always route through. This is why hubs will naturally occur. A Lightning hub is a node with enough channels open and enough liquidity available that by connecting them, you limit the amount of channels you need to personally open, never have to worry about their balance, and reduce the amount of hops and fees required to make transactions. Unlike miners, who don't actually transfer value, these hubs will likely be classified as third-party settlement organizations, being subject to heavy financial regulation laws such as KYC and AML. Also, unlike on-chain transactions, there is a chance of theft in this system. If another party attempts to broadcast a channel in an old state, they can try to steal your Bitcoin if you can't catch them in time. For this, you'll either need to run a full Bitcoin node that will always be online to monitor the transactions yourself, or hire a third-party service to do this on your behalf. So, the Lightning hubs will require to be set up for financial regulation and reporting laws, require massive amounts of liquidity to keep multiple well-funded open channels, offer fraud departments to watch the blockchain constantly and prevent theft, all while taking small fees for every transaction you route through them. Does this system sound familiar? Just replace the term open channel with checking account. These Lightning Network hubs will be ran by the same financial institutions the Bitcoin was made to challenge. The banks aren't fighting Bitcoin because Bitcoin will be the new banking system. Bitcoin needed no middleman. There was no fraud to detect, no permission to give, no transaction to reverse, no fees to collect. So it had to be broken to need them. And the worst part is, you won't have a choice. Either give up your freedom and use the Lightning Network, or be subject to double or even triple digit ever increasing fees for every move you make on the blockchain. The truth is, the 1 megabyte blocks restricting Bitcoin are purposely kept there by the developers. The absurdly high fees and long waits create a demand for a solution, and the solution they give us is the banking industry. The block size restriction was placed as a temporary safeguard by Bitcoin's creator, Satoshi Nakamoto. As soon as the blocks were close to being full, it was to be raised again. Satoshi mysteriously left the project in 2010, but before he did, he left instructions on how to raise the block size and left Gavin Anderson in charge of the project. When Satoshi left, institutional money started to make its way in and take control, and a company, Blockstream, emerged. Over time, it happened that a large portion of the development team was part of or hired by this company. And when it came time for another block size increase, there was a portion of the developers that thought this was a bad idea. This just so happened to be the same group of developers, the word for Blockstream. The story of how Blockstream took over is a long and strange one, and I'll have to cover it in another video. But with massive amounts of censorship, organized attacks, and manipulation, Blockstream managed to take primary control over the development of Bitcoin and forced out any of the developers who opposed their choices and gave open arms to the ones whose opinions are aligned. Ever since then, the fees have exponentially risen. The confirmation times have grown from minutes to hours to days, and the merchants are dropping support at a rapid rate. The block size should have been raised long ago. It could be raised for years without any risk of centralization, giving us time to find other solutions. But it won't happen, because Blockstream states that they plan to turn a profit by selling side chains to businesses, allowing them to accept custom Bitcoin-backed chains that aren't subject to Bitcoin's high fees, taking small fees for every transaction, fixed monthly fees from the businesses, and selling the custom hardware needed to run them. This model is far more profitable if Bitcoin doesn't work properly. If the fees are low and no one wants their sidechains, then how will they pay the $74 million back to the corporations and big bankers who have invested, the ones who benefit from the Lightning hubs? This amazing technology, designed to give freedom, stability, and power to the people around the world, has been ripped apart and destroyed for power, control, and profit. But it's okay, because we're going to the moon.
All right. All right. There's a lot wrong with this video, and this is propaganda on the one side. There's propaganda on both sides, but it's important to understand that there are aspects of the story that are accentuated. I mean, there's a lot of facts, and you can talk about the facts, but also the order that they're presented in and the assertions they make are oftentimes unknown. We don't really know how society is going to interact with these things or how centralization will or will not arrive. This guy has a point of view. I also have a point of view, and I think everybody should apply their brains to this question and put their money where their mouth is and act accordingly. We're going to get something good in the end. The assertion by this video is that there's going to be centralization and regulation around the Lightning Network hubs. I think that remains to be seen. Lightning Network and the software around it is open source. If you want to be a bank today, you need a banking license and several $100,000 worth of staff and licensing. And to open up a Lightning Network node, you don't need anything, right? I mean, you just need some software and some expertise. So the barrier to entry is not there. Now, it's true that the nodes that have more Bitcoin staked there could be some centralization there. And I think that's something to be aware of. If a bunch of people create a huge Lightning Network channel and it takes less hops to get to your destination, is therefore cheaper, then there's consolidation there based on the economics. I think that's something to watch out for. But if that node were to misbehave, like I said, this Lightning Network acts like the internet. The internet is unstoppable because things can route around. If they want to be a bad actor and start controlling people's transactions, there should be network topography to get that transaction, me to Julian Assange, for example, right? That's the nature of the network, the decentralized network that they have in mind. And so the assertion that these things are going to consolidate into single nodes, and those nodes are going to be subject to KYC and AML, and they're going to become banks, that remains to be seen. It's something to watch out for. Anybody want to chime in on this, or?
I'm just wondering about the effect on the Bitcoin miners itself. If less transactions are happening on the Bitcoin network, and they're waiting for their blocks to fill up so they can get their block reward, and everything's happening elsewhere, are those miners actually going to want to leave to go to another coin that is more active and faster for them to get?
That's a great point, because the miners are going to mine the blockchains that are most profitable for them. And right now, the Bitcoin blockchain is paying them the block reward and the fees, so they're quite happy right now with a full blockchain. And if you were to move enough information into the Lightning Network where they were to see their fees drop to zero, then you'd be right back where Bitcoin Cash is, and we still got the mining reward for the next 100 years or so. So I think there's always going to be an incentive to mine, and the real question is, how are we going to handle all these new users that are coming in? Can we just keep making the block size larger, or do we realize these kind of layered approaches where one Bitcoin transaction on chain can handle tens of thousands off chain, versus trying to get every coffee and donut onto the actual chain? It remains to be seen what's the best approach. Everybody who owned Bitcoin on August 1st, 2017 have both, and the market is deciding, right? We will all get something better out of this, and I think we need to keep talking about it. And I don't think we can be too religious about one stance or the other, because it's a complex system. I mean, there's millions of individual actors acting in their own interest and also changing their behavior based on new information. So we cannot predict in a binary fashion what will win or what won't. And who knows, in 100 years, it might not be Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash. It could be something totally new.
And we might not care.
Yes, let's hope so. We'll all be living in utopia and having robots giving us pedicure.
It does just seem to be incredibly complex, because ultimately there are customers out there. The that actually all they want to do is spend money and have, and merchants just want to have 2.5%, 3.5%. They don't want a variable fee. All this sort of stuff. Nobody's going to buy into that. It's so
well,
complex.
there's an interesting precedent. I mean, we don't know what's actually going to happen. We're about to find out. But there's an interesting precedent in the internet itself with the IP version 4, right? When they first started sending packets around the internet, we had IP version 4. And, there was all kinds of things that people wanted to do on the internet, like video conferencing and live streaming. And they were like, there's no way IP version 4 is going to handle all of the things that we want it to do. So they made IP version, I think they made IP version 5. We're now on IP version 6. But what are we using? We're still using IP version 4. And there's all kinds of complexity built on top of that to make that magic happen. But the interesting thing, the miraculous thing, is that it does work. It does work quite well. And the internet still runs on that old technology, funny enough. And the real scalability happens on another layer, and the base layer stays pretty static.
But I guess if you also got the situation that there's 21 million Bitcoins that are ever going to be produced at about 16.8 now, if the price continues to rise up, what liquidity is there going to actually be in the whole market to have it as an operational currency? I just don't see it.
Well, don't forget that each Bitcoin can be broken up into 100 million pieces.
I get that, but I mean, in terms of people actually holding on to it, if it's going to go to $100,000 or $1 million when John McAfee does his various bits, then I mean, people are going to hold it.
Right, but not everybody.
I agree, not everybody.
Yeah. Right, there's a lot of people holding right now, but there's still a full
But the issue
network.
is that Visa and MasterCard and PayPal, I'm not saying they're perfect, but people don't hold a bit of PayPal or a bit of MasterCard or a bit of Visa.
Yes.
So you've got to, I think in some ways, I just don't ever think Bitcoin personally is ever going to be an operational currency.
Can I follow on to that real quick?
Sure.
Looking at the ecosystem holistically, and hypothetically, what if Ethereum introduced hypothetically the ability to produce 1 million transactions per second? What would happen then to this? Because this is a store of wealth and assets, and we're utilizing it as a currency. But thinking about that holistically ecosystem, like in the original purpose of this, versus the other 1,367 currencies today, right?
Yes.
But then specifically with Ethereum that we're all using as a currency, as a DApp, right? What if those transactions could go to 1 million per second?
I think that's something we need to watch because they are also having their throughput problems. Right. And I think one of my Ethereum transactions cost more than $1. And the what we saw was with the CryptoKitties things that we talked about a week or two ago was that a CryptoKitties app could take over the network, and so you can't even send
22% of it.
Right. So, but that's okay. I mean, this is where we find ourselves today. It's these problems that necessitate a solution. We're going to get a solution because there's too much pain around it, and maybe it'll be Ethereum, and we need to watch that. I mean, this is why we can't be too religious. I would say to religious devotion to one coin or the other could create a blind spot, and we do need to watch the others.
I just want to raise that.
What are these others?
Well,
that's
a good question.
Started with
I'm sorry. There's a lot of hot air going on. Well, there are hundreds of cryptocurrencies to choose from, but there are only 2 that have full blocks, and that's Ethereum and Bitcoin. So they're the ones that are really addressing the problem, or they have the circumstances where they can address the problem. What's interesting is Bitcoin Cash claims to be in this fight, but their blocks are less than 1 megabyte, and they're doing way more transactions on the Bitcoin network than on the Bitcoin Cash network. So they don't have the circumstances under which to do their development because they don't have full blocks.
Litecoin is the same, right? They're like, we're faster and cheaper.
All of the other chains that don't have full blocks are not able to address this problem because they don't have the circumstances to experiment within.
Well, with Bcash, you have a geopolitical topic to go. And not to get into conspiracy theories, but there's a geopolitical component of Bitcoin Cash. 27% of the global mining power for the A6 network is in China. Bitmain owns the Chinese manufacturer of the miners. So there's a whole nother geopolitical
Right. Well,
consideration.
and if you care about decentralization over fast transactions, then that's a significant fact to consider.
But isn't 70% of the Bitcoin network mined in China as well? Like,
It's moving to Canada.
Yeah.
it's what?
It's moving to Canada.
Moving to Canada?
Oh yeah, sure. You betcha.
So the Chinese government announced
For Canada.
for yeah.
The Chinese
They're
just
government.
They already bought all the real estate in Vancouver, so now they're looking at data center real estate.
It's still Chinese owned, but just operating in Canada.
Right, okay.
It's like cheap.
I know, what's the incentive
They
there?
have government problems there. So, Garrett, is Lightning Network set up similar way as Raiden Network for
I
Ethereum?
I thought I had
Because I actually never knew how it works. But
well, it's similar to the Tor network or the internet itself. I had a tab here, it must have gotten closed. Anyway, it's similar to the internet itself, and they're smart enough to make it anonymous and randomized this time around by integrating the Tor technology. So there should be, in principle, a universe of Lightning nodes that are out there. They've all got various Bitcoins associated with their channel. They've all got the other nodes that they're connected to. And when I want to send value from one node to another, there's a million routes it could take. And through smart contracts and multi-sig and then the Lightning Network technology itself, it's going to find the cheapest route through that whole network. And if there's someone that wants to, that has, KYC and AML restrictions, then we should be able to route right around those. Or if there's someone wants to deny me the ability to pay somebody or wants to deny me the ability to get paid, if there is a sufficiently large network, then and it's using this Tor technology, then nodes should be able to participate in an anonymous way, not knowing if any incoming or outbound transaction is actual payment from that party or just a relay in the network itself. So it's a very attractive idea. I mean, there's could be a lot of hand waving going on, like, oh, it just does this and it's like the internet and blah, 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 and then it's going to be way better. But we don't know yet, and we don't know what it will do at scale. We don't know if there will be enough people that are willing to run a Lightning Network node. We don't know what kind of fees they'll charge. We don't know how the governments will react to this new situation. There's no way to know what will happen.
it sounds like there will be some Bitcoins locked up for some time, at least.
Well, this is actually an interesting aspect, because right now everybody has Bitcoin in cold storage and it's not serving any purpose at all. Like the Bitcoin that I have in my, tucked away for a rainy day, like it's of no service to anybody. But if I went through the process of setting up a Lightning node, stored my Bitcoin in that node, that could facilitate all kinds of people transacting small amounts based on the Bitcoin that I have. So it then serves a purpose, right? And maybe I can actually earn a return on my Bitcoin. It's not just sitting there, not serving society in any way, like gold in a vault or cash in my mattress. So it's an attractive idea for me. I think.
Can we run it on simple hardware like personal computers and things like that, or is it going to be more industrial equipment needed to run?
Well, they want to keep that barrier low, and that's why they have the 1 megabyte cap. They want as many people as possible to afford to be able to run a Bitcoin node.
But even with a 1 megabyte cap right now, miners need big systems, right?
Right, but these aren't miners, these are nodes. So you need to store the blockchain, which is about 1.5 gigs. That's like less than $100 worth of storage. You need the bandwidth, which is not manageable, and hard drive space, which is manageable. But if if the blockchain starts growing 8x instead of 1x, like with Bitcoin Cash, maybe it becomes unfeasible for you to run that node. And this is Bitcoin Core's philosophy behind decentralization, is keeping that barrier to running a node as low as possible, so that any one of us can afford, if we have the technical expertise and a minimal amount of money, we can participate.
People now are running Bitcoin nodes just because they believe in the network. They don't get paid anything.
Yeah.
That's right. And as a consequence, the node count has gone down. because there is no economic incentive to run a node.
They don't even have voting power.
Well,
right?
They
Is that
do
true?
have power, because this is where the user-activated soft fork played a role, where the nodes were going to stop enforcing rules or exclude nodes that weren't following the rules that they were voting on, basically voting with their node vote, or deciding which consensus rules they were going to follow. So there's a value to the ecosystem in running nodes, and there's an economic disincentive today to run a node. If we can turn that around, the implications are pretty positive, I think. By the way, if you have a Lightning Network node open, that means you're not trading it on an exchange, meaning there's less Bitcoins trading on exchanges, meaning there's a smaller amount trading, which means the price, given the same supply and more demand, it should affect the price positively.
Are there any news on when it's going to be launched?
Yeah, I had another tab open. I'm sorry I don't have it, and I'm not going to be able to find it on the spot here. But they've got Lightning Network running on the test net, and they've got like 5,000 nodes running there, and you can actually see the node topology. There are no Lightning nodes in Bali at all. In fact, there's very few in Asia at all that you can see. I'm just describing what you would have seen if I had my act together. But geographically, it looks like everything's in North America, everything's in Europe, and there's a few scattered all over the place. But there's another way to look at it, and that is how many nodes are basically centralized nodes that have a bunch of nodes connecting to them. And there's a whole forest of nodes that kind of have a lot of lots to lots or many to many relationships, and there's a few that are quite large. You can see they look like a dot with a bunch of incoming connections. So there is centralization happening even on the test net where there's not real money being exchanged. When real money is exchanged, that could change. We need to watch that. But the technology seems to be ready. I mean, it's running on the test net. It's been in development and being tested for well over a year. And it might just be a matter of achieving the network effects so that it can run on the main net. And we can see where the problems happen when you try to do it at scale.
Is it running on Litecoin?
It's possible on Litecoin as well, because they both have segregated witness and they can do atomic swaps. We haven't talked about atomic swaps tonight, but that's a really interesting feature. Maybe we can talk about that next week. But Lightning Network does have the technology to participate. But yeah, they don't have full blocks, so there's less incentive to explore those options on Litecoin.
I do an atomic swap for my dinosaur Dow coin.
Yes. One of us in this room still has Dow tokens. They're on sale. Cheap. Matthew over here. Anybody want Dow tokens? You want a distributed autonomous?
To Ethereum?
Anyway.
Okay.
Bonus
reward.
Guys, it's 6 o'clock, and we are just about out of time. Any final notes on? I know that I have a point of view. I'm trying to just raise these topics for discussion. So if there's anybody that feels like I've presented, in a biased way, I just want to invite anybody to represent the other side. You have a little bit, which I really appreciate. And is there anyone else that wants to kind of chime in on the on-chain scaling side of the argument?
What about
Tangle. I know it's new technology. It's definitely not operating at scale, so it can't really be tested at scale yet. Probably something to watch for, I'm not technical enough to evaluate it just on its own merits. But I don't think anybody is really in a position to say whether it can be a viable replacement for the problems we're talking about, because they just don't have enough traffic on their network yet.
What about Hashgraph?
I don't know enough about that to comment. Do you know what the idea is?
I mean, it sounds a bit like what we were just talking about, but I just saw an hour of info on it and just got interested in it. But
there's a lot of interesting tech showing up. I mean, the smartest people on the planet are playing in this space, which is really cool. People, this is a reason to quit Google or Facebook, right? Go work on this stuff. So the smartest people in the world are involved in this problem. But the really fascinating thing about it is it's not just a technology problem. Like fancy tech isn't all there is to it. There's game theory, there's sociology and psychology, economics at play, incentive systems. So, and we can't test these things until they exist in the wild and are competing, in the wild with the things that are already there.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell if you're getting an infomercial or seeing something that's
well,
something that's just like
what's interesting about this whole space, and this is why we've been getting together every week for 3 years and we're not bored yet. If you learn enough about this and see how the world treats it, you can learn about all kinds of other things, like how the news works, how politics work, because you can see how those organizations interact with this new thing that's arriving, and how they try and spin things and make their own points. And you can learn a lot about propaganda, knowing everything about Bitcoin, and then watching a news about it, or watching a politician talk about it. You can really get makes you wonder, like, well, what is that? How is, I don't understand anything about global warming. Well, like how is that being misrepresented or represented from people that don't actually know the ins and outs of it? It's fascinating.
Can I ask in real layman's terms, Gary, like with the Litecoin, what would it look like if the Litecoin is adopted? I mean, Lightning Network is adopted. Would it be in the form of a hard fork or a series of hard forks on the Bitcoin blockchain, or would it be
No, actually, it doesn't require any changes at all to Bitcoin.
It doesn't.
Which is the beauty of it. That's when they say layer 2 solution, that means that Bitcoin can stay exactly the way it is, and you interact with Bitcoin on layer 2, and so layer 1 doesn't need to change at all, and you can begin addressing the problem domain in layer 2 without any changes to Bitcoin. So
the coders, it's not like coders are conflicting over like some difficulty issue, and whoever codes the most, or whichever way it ends up leaning, it goes that way. It's not like Bitcoin Cash.
No, this is going to be user adoption of the best solution that happens on top of Bitcoin, on top of stable Bitcoin that doesn't change at all. It's immutable and rock solid and unchangeable.
It sounds like if few of us here decide to use Lightning Network, Bitcoin Core has nothing to say about it, right?
Right.
We decided that's how we're going.
Bitcoin itself doesn't know if I'm a Lightning Network node or a person. Right. It just interacts with me and the Lightning node in the same way. Enforcing its own rules as it goes along.
Are the transactions through Lightning Network traceable?
That's a good question. It does provide some anonymity because unless you have a view into the actual nodes, you're not, those things never make it onto the actual blockchain. So I think that's something, I think I need to learn a little bit more about the anonymity aspect. They say that it provides more anonymity, but I don't know.
Maybe anonymity for extra fee?
Admittedly, there's got to be, like, for it to flip through 5 different people to get to the other side, there's got to be a signature that goes with that for that person to be able to identify.
Yeah, there's some sort of routing information, but I think they're using the Tor network, which means that any node on the network doesn't know if the person requesting is an endpoint or just another node on the network. They don't have that information. So presumably any node on the network is just interacting based on a set of rules, not based on who it is. Now, there could be a Lightning Network that enforces KYC AML, and that could be something that, if you want to interact with fiat, you have to use this version of the Lightning Network, and maybe that will arise, but it's not a function of the technology as it exists now.
Curious do you have anything to add about Lightning Network?
No.
Oh, this guy.
This
guy.
There.
Oh, no. Yeah, one thing I thought.
Yeah.
One thing I think is really exciting about Lightning Network is, like you said, it operates similar to the internet, which actually allows it to kind of communicate with other chains potentially in the future. After it's established, of course. After they get it off the ground.
Right.
It has the potential for other chains that are also running the Lightning Network to communicate with Bitcoin or Litecoin or any other chain on the Lightning Network.
So Lightning Network can be implemented also on Ethereum or Neo?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So any currency or coin that is able has SegWit.
So basically, the rated network or the new one for Neo, basically necessary if we're gonna end up just using one.
I'm not sure about the rated network, but I know any Bitcoin based one.
Okay.
Yeah, is
really good.
That's atomic swaps, right?
Yeah, that's exactly. Atomic swaps is just the tip of the iceberg of that. You know, I think there's a whole cross-chain communication that can actually happen into the future.
I mean, Lightning is a protocol, right?
Right.
So if you've got things that have value and they can stake value on the network, and then nodes trust that there's value there that's worthwhile, then it doesn't matter if it's Bitcoin, Litecoin, or anything else that's adhering to the protocol rules of Lightning.
Exactly.
So Bitcoin, Lightning, Ethereum.
Yeah, exactly. And atomic swaps is a way for it to communicate. It's a contract, basically. And pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's good stuff. All right, guys. So that's all the time we have. We do this every week, Tuesday night. We need your brains in the room to figure all this crazy crypto stuff out. Every week, 5 p.m. at ubud.org. They're nice enough to give us this nice, cool conference room to meet in. We also have We also have our Facebook community. That's at facebook.com/bitcoinsinbali. Check us out there. My name is Gary. You can follow me on Twitter at DykstraNet. Thanks for coming tonight, guys. We'll see you next week. Same time, same channel.
There's a Bitcoin machine. We used to have in the lobby. No.